So recently I watched a video on Muzan versus Sukuna, and I thought it was pretty disingenuous in favor of Sukuna. And after recently rereading Demon Slayer and catching up on Jujutsu Kaisen, I've decided to kind of pit these sort of similar verses against each other. And after talking to a couple of friends of mine, I decided to start off with an interesting one. Tanjiro versus Yuji. If you aren't caught up with either Jujutsu Kaisen or Demon Slayer, this is your spoiler warning. When you're caught up, please come back and enjoy the video. Thank you. One of the things I'd like to address first are the potential speed gaps amongst these characters. As we know in Jujutsu Kaisen, aside from say like 5 characters, Piercing Blood is an extremely fast attack that caps out around slightly faster than the speed of sound, that can even tag higher ups like Urame when they're not careful, and even some characters like Gojo himself. And lightning based attacks are guaranteed to hit, with characters like Kashimo generating electricity to blast through the atmosphere like lightning, leaving us with a pretty low speed ceiling for Jujutsu Kaisen. While a much weaker Tanjiro than the one that we're using for this video could use a weaker, rougher version of Thunder, Slap, and Flash to rip through the air like lightning. And with that, you can see the narrative I'm trying to build here, that Demon Slayer gaps most of Jujutsu Kaisen in speed. As Mach 3 is seen as impressive, mind you, someone like Hikari could at best avoid death from lightning, while characters like Tanjiro is fighting relative if not better than Zenitsu in the final fight against Muzan. Before we move on, I do want to address a couple of arguments people commonly use for speed scaling for both verses. One being how the effects in Demon Slayer aren't actually real, so they aren't moving at lightning speeds. But this is never the statement, as Tanjiro can still hear the slashes from Zenitsu and smell the accurate odor emitted from them, which is something that comes from the burning when lightning strikes, even thinking the thunder was real. And Rengoku's swords gives off actual heat, to name just a few examples. But even aside from the Slayers themselves, the Demon Blood arts are in fact real. Characters like Antegu summon lightning while battering Mitsuri, who reacts to said lightning, slashing them in quick succession. Tanjiro later in the series reacts to Muzan while Mitsuri cannot, proving that he's surpassed her in strength and speed. And 2, an argument that's been going on around recently with Kashimo using his electromagnetic waves based attack, which move relative to light speed, and a heavily fatigued Sukuna reacts to those attacks, giving him relativistic speeds, right? No, this would be extremely inconsistent within the verse, as minutes earlier, Sukuna thought using a Mach Piercing Blood would work on Gojo, someone who's faster and stronger than Kashimo. And panels later, he was about to be tagged by Kashimo's lightning attack before returning to his true form. Why would Kashimo go for an attack if Sukuna could dodge his light speed attack, then immediately go for a lightning attack, which would be much slower? So the overall speed for Demon Slayer going off consistency would be much faster than what Jujutsu Kaisen has to offer. But talking about their abilities, we'll go over the punch kick merchant himself, Yuji, just to see how deep his bag really is. Other than your standard punch, kicks, enhanced strength, speed, and endurance, Yuji has attacks like the Divergent Fist, an ability with a double impact. Then Black Flash, which can be performed by any sorcerer, is an attack that raises your power by the power of 2.5. Upon landing that, sorcerers also enter the zone, making them more likely to hit those like flashes and getting some of their cursed energy back, as well as raising them to 120% of their potential. With all that being said though, Black Flash is just a 1 in a million chance attack, though Yuji can seemingly perform this attack at will, but it is by circumstance. The most recent manga chapters do show us that he has blood manipulation and reverse curse technique, being able to decently regenerate, although it does seem like we've seen his limits while fighting Sukuna. And lastly, his most contentious ability, Soul Punches, which some have argued are durability negation due to it affecting Sukuna whether he'll block or not, but the main issue with that is the story blatantly just debunks that, as the characters essentially describe it more in the same vein as Vegeta's forced spirit fission, separating the hosts from one another, as they're literally held as soul seizing punches, and not the same as Maki's soul split katana. Very distinct wording there. And on the other hand, we have Tanjiro, who has the 10 forms of water breathing, Hinokami Kagura, and more minorly, lightning breathing. But outside of those abilities, he has the Demon Slayer mark that enhances all of his stats, said to bring out 100 times strength in his whole body. While that's more than likely a hyperbole, the Demon Slayer mark is still an insane amp nonetheless. Along with the transparent world, giving him the ability to see all bodily movement, like muscle contractions and internal organs. And the selfless state, allowing him to fight as one with himself. No bloodlust or emotion, just pure drive, making him appear as he's an unusual creature that shouldn't exist. He also has an unreal sense of smell, being so accurate he can detect changes in the atmosphere, blood, intent, smelling, lies, etc. His lesser abilities like recovery breathing help him slightly heal and recover stamina. His red blade, and he also has total concentration breathing, which is a constant boost to their stat, like curse energy enhancement for Jujutsu sorcerers. There's a couple of things left, like their AP, as Yuji definitely hits harder than Tanjiro, but it's not as wide of a gap as you may think. As the highest you would scale Jujutsu Kaisen from without wanking the verse is from 15-finger Sukuna's fire arrow feat, which can get to around city level through calcs, although this won't be much help for Yuji as he does not directly scale to this Sukuna as of now, but later he could. On the other hand, we have Tanjiro's AP, and we can sort of scale him from his fight with Muzan, as even in his weakened state, he was still far above the likes of Doma, who was heavily weakened himself due to Shinobu's poison and was still able to create an Ice Bodhisattva, which has been calced to city block to multi-city block levels of AP. And we could safely put Tanjiro at the bare minimum of those levels of AP, let alone with the imps and accounting for all his in-game feats, along with the other characters, as they were all nerfed in their final encounters. Now, how I see the actual fight going is pretty much Yuji not being able to really catch Tanjiro and not doing any damage, while Tanjiro will be fighting a battle with someone who can not only tank a lot of his blows due to the AP difference, but also someone who would be able to regenerate most of those blows due to his RCT. It would ultimately bog down to a battle of attrition, which Tanjiro would definitely win, regardless as Demon Slayer characters fight from nightfall to dawn without much rest the entire time. And luckily for Tanjiro, he fights people who regenerate all the time. Also, nothing in Yuji's kit would matter too much via the difference in speed. Piercing Blast is a speed of sound attack. It's not hitting Tanjiro, neither Supernova, Divergent Fist, or even if you believed he could do soul damage to Tanjiro, he would also be too slow to even hit Tanjiro. Yuji's only hope is to land a Black Flash with precise timing, and it more than likely could end Tanjiro, but it is a literal 1 in a million chance move. Regardless, we do know that Tanjiro is the better fighter due to fighting people like Akaza, who was touted as a martial arts master even while human. And he admits that Tanjiro is the only person in centuries to beat him in a straight-up confrontation. And that's why Tanjiro versus Yuji is closer than you think. Thank you all so much for watching this video. It's been in the works for a while because of procrastination, but it's finally out. And if you want to see more Jujutsu Kaisen or Demon Slayer content, subscribe and like for more.